Morning, everybody. Happy, if that's the word, last day to raise the Titanic Day. And welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Foxx. And today I'm joined by the Mirror's assistant editor, Jason Beattie. Good morning, Jason.
Morning, Susie. Welcome from a happy, sunny East London.
Yes, you're in the office. I'm in my office.
That's because my internet has gone down yet again at home.
It is a bit of a relief, I've got to say, when we do these things. Your internet is quite often a bit patchy. Quite often I'm talking and then we'll suddenly see you back again. You're in a completely different room. You've gone to try to sort of stand on one leg and hold your breath and hope the internet works.
A special good morning to Virgin Customer Care or Customer Care.
Hello, Virgin. Now, this is the paper review. So get into the comments, ask us your questions, whether it's about Virgin Customer Care or something that's in the news. Those of you listening later on podcast are just going to have to bang on the walls and hope somebody hears you. So what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on news that those missing on the submarine exploring the wreck of the Titanic includes one of the King's friends, a board member of the Prince's Trust, no less. And we're hearing this morning that sounds have been heard from the area that it is thought to have disappeared in. So more on that in a bit. But first, I want to go to page 8, where it is revealed that calls to strip 2 of the Tories who were honoured after their attendance at a lockdown-busting bash might get their baubles taken away from them. Jason, can you take us through this? Who are we talking? Remind us who we're talking about, and why do we think they would actually lose them?
So this was a party held to mark the end of Sean Bailey's unsuccessful campaign to be London mayor. The invitation was to jingle and mingle. And then the Mirror later found, we exposed the still photograph you just seen, but then we got the video of them partying and dancing and going, oh, let's hope we don't get caught because this could be illegal. Yeah, so there they are dancing around. Yeah. Now, one of the people in the video, the guy just seen here with the braces, is called Ben Mallet. He was given a gong in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Not present in the video is Sean Bailey, the unsuccessful candidate who's been put up for a peerage. Now, the whole thing stinks from the beginning, which is why Boris Johnson was allowed to have a resignation honours list in the first place. Yeah, it was waved through almost in full by Rishi Sunak 2 days before the Privileges Committee report came out, which said, this guy's a liar. He's lied to MPs, he's lied to a committee. Worse than that, he tried to orchestrate a campaign of abuse and intimidation against those holding him to account. That's the behaviour of somebody we then give the right to give honours to, which is extraordinary. Yeah. So now, obviously, there's quite a lot of hand-wringing amongst the Conservatives who are saying, maybe this should be looked at. The mechanism for stripping of honours, it goes to the forfeiture committee. Mm-hmm. Chaired by a senior civil servant. We're already in the realm of Sir Humphrey here.
Yeah, and all the senior civil servants are a sir, have baubles themselves. So it's very much a case of trying to take it back from your mate, isn't it? So what we've got here then, because Sean Bailey, he was the mayoral candidate, and he was also on the London Assembly, and he was chairman of the Police and Crime Committee, and he had to resign when we published, or us and the Times published information about this party existing in the first place. 4 people apparently were disciplined about this party, but the police never took any action. Now, the police are investigating our video. Well, they've asked for it and are looking at it, same as everybody else on the internet, only a bit later than everybody else. And presumably they are going to find there is enough evidence now to prosecute, because people are dancing and mingling beneath a poster that says 2 meters social distance. And on this particular day, London was in tier 2. There was no indoor mixing allowed. It's a flat, fairly obvious criminal offence. At midnight on this day, there'd just been a press conference saying the next day it was going into tier 3 and it was going to be more serious. They would probably be shut and everything else. So it's sticky. If, let's say, Sean Bailey were to get a fixed penalty notice for this. Now, I just looked at the rules of the forfeiture committee, which Judy on Twitter has sent me. Thanks, Judy. And it very kindly says, if someone's committed a criminal offence, they can have, before or after being a peer, they can have their lordship taken away. But is it going to be taken away for a fixed penalty notice? That's the thing.
So I just looked up the list of people who've had their honours stripped by the forfeiture committee. It was only
How
8.
long is it? 8?
Yeah.
8?
That's 8 since 1916. So the first guy was Roger Casement, who was quite an interesting character, who was basically killed for treason for standing up for the Irish nationalists in 1916. Others on the list are Harvey Weinstein. You can understand why they might want to take his award away. Lester Piggott. So there's not very many of them. Fred Goodwin, remember him? Fred the Shred, the former Bank of Scotland guy. He lost his knighthood in 2012. And the boxer Nassim Hamed. So, Anthony Blunt, the spy, who was the Queen's creator of paintings. But not very many of them. And
that's an average of one every
two of those were done for treason, which is probably a slightly greater offence than a fixed penalty notice. So you can see the hurdle of what they deem as improper behaviour is quite high.
Yeah. Now, what do you think, everybody? Do you think these honours should be revoked? And not just that, because I think we all do, but do you think they're going to be revoked? Because, Sean Bailey, they've got to bear in mind, the names on this honours list that Boris did get through, they were the cleanest ones. They were the ones that the House of Lords Appointments Committee didn't go, oh my God, no, not having them. Right? So these are the ones that the House of Lords Appointment Committee thought would just about get through. Now, Sean Bailey is a failed parliamentary candidate on 2 occasions. He's a failed mayoral candidate. He had a charity that sort of disappeared in sort of financial misspending. And he's not exactly got what you call a stellar career. Why he was considered to be an adornment to the House of Lords and the upper chamber is kind of a bit beyond me in the first place. But the fact he got appointed, and if he gets a fixed penalty, he had to resign from that police and crime committee because he knew it was illegal, even though he left before the video was filmed. If he gets a fixed penalty notice, he's just going to pay the whatever it is, 100 quid, and go quiet for a year or two, isn't he? And then sort of come back again. And if you think about it, both these men could hand back their honours. Ben Mallet could hand back his OBE. And let's face it, anybody who works in Tory HQ and wears red braces, Jason, is probably going to the House of Lords anyway, eventually. He doesn't need the OBE, does he? Right. And secondly, and Sean Bailey, he's sort of stuck with a peerage. He can't throw it back, I don't think, but he can just not use it. He cannot claim it. He cannot go to the House of Lords. But when we've got Jeffrey Archer in the House of Lords, Jason, someone convicted and served a criminal sentence for perjury, what hope is there that someone who merely went to an illegal party and left before it got completely mad and had to resign afterwards will be considered somehow unclean by the forfeiture committee? That's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly ironical. I mean, if Bailey and Ben Mallet had any honour, they wouldn't have accepted the honour.
No.
But it appears they are going to. The whole House of Lords just needs abolishing. It's that simple. I mean, we shouldn't have a position where, a prime minister at whim can just appoint, cronies, lick-spittles, donors, hairdressers, you name it, just to have honours.
Assistants who happen to be blonde.
Yeah, and then give people the right for life to set and make and vote for and against our laws. And that seems to me kind of, that appeared in any other country would deplore it as a travesty of democracy. And in Britain, it seemed as some sort of kind of quaint, kind of noble tradition. I mean, it's bonkers. It's mad, Susie. I mean, why do we allow this? We should have an elected upper chamber which is accountable to people. And there's no justification for having the second legislature in the world after China of 800 people. It's mad.
Of course it is. But every prime minister is stuck in this position, aren't they? They come into power, they need to get legislation through the upper chamber, and the only way to do it is to put some of their own lickspittles in to overrule the other lickspittles for the previous person. So it's a catch-22 situation. And there are quite a few peers who do work, who are there to, who are scrutinising, who are providing expertise, who are earning their money and doing a good, solid job. I mean, who would object to Doreen Lawrence, the mother of Stephen Lawrence, being in the House of Lords and saying this is what equality should be? There is a purpose to some of that.
There are dozens of other countries which have elected second chambers, which are also filled with good people who do good work, and scrutinise legislation properly, but they are accountable.
Yes.
we have a situation where a 30-year-old who seemed to have done almost nothing in her life apart from spend a brief time in Downing Street with Boris Johnson is going to the House of Lords, and she'll be there for life, and she can claim £300 a day for doing it. And on what grounds is that justifiable?
I can understand why some people, they're not politicians, and going through the election process may just be something that's not going to work as far as they're concerned for different reasons. But I can understand why you might want to appoint some people to the House of Lords. But I do think, why isn't there a fixed term? Why don't we say, yes, Doreen Lawrence, this person, that person, Lord Sugar, whatever it is, they would be of use. They've got 10 years. And then after that, they've done their bit, that it rolls. It's not for life. It's the whole, that is a hangover from the life peerage thing, from the aristocracy. And that's one of the bits you have to abolish, is the fact that it must happen for life. That's just, no, you don't get £300 a day for life because you were a lollipop lady, even though a lollipop lady might be better at the job than some of the people in the House of Lords. So why do they get it? There is reform needed, isn't there?
Yep.
Quite plainly. And Keir Starmer has said he's going to reform it, but he's going to be in this position when he comes into power, Jason, of the House of Lords, an upper chamber that is filled with Tory peers, some of them very friendly with Boris Johnson and damn grateful to have got under the wire. No doubt some of Liz Truss's mates as well by the time we get to Starmer. He's going to have to appoint some of his own cronies, isn't he, to get legislation through?
Yeah, but the attitude in Labour is if they get into power next year, that they're going to have such a backlog of important legislation to get through. They really don't want to get snarled up in Lords reform, which I kind of have some sympathy for. And at the same time, as you say, there's an imbalance there because the majority of members of the House of Lords are Conservative. There's about 100 more Conservative peers than our Labour ones, which means he probably couldn't get any legislation through unless he actually puts more Labour peers there. My attitude is, yes, I get that, but wouldn't it be better just to kind of also at the same time bring in legislation to say we're going to reduce the number of peers, and we'll cap it at like a reasonable number, but what's the 650 kind of MPs? Why not cap it at 400 max in the Lords, and then rework the balance from there? Wouldn't take that.
And every time you need to appoint a new one, it's one in, one out.
Well, I'd go 1 in, 2 out. And if they haven't spoken in the last 5 years, they shouldn't be there at all.
Yeah, I do think they should be. When they go in there and look and say, how are we going to reform this? The first thing is retrospectively, who's actually turned up for the last 6 years? Right, you go. Yeah. You're off. Yeah. Sorry, don't care who you are. You're off, and start from there. But we'll have to see, won't we? I do expect if he does come into power and has to load a load of Labour peers in there, he's going to get accused of going back on a promise to reform. So he's going to have to try to do the two things at the same time. The Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Select Committee has decided they're going to have a probe into who gets to be a member of the House of Lords and how the appointment process works. Good luck with that one. It's about as obscure as it needs to be, as Sir Humphrey wants it to be. And also, the current Tory party chairman, Greg Hands, the man who keeps tweeting that there's no money left, that old letter from Labour days, apparently he was in charge of Sean Bailey's mayoral campaign. So he should have been aware of that party. Was he aware? I'm sure there'll be some questions asked. Mike says, thank you, Mike. Questions must be asked of Greg Hands, who was in charge of the Bailey mayoral campaign. Was he there? If not, he must have known about the party. He should at least have known that there was a catering invoice, because it was his responsibility to handle the funds. So questions there for him. Now, we need to move on to the big story of the day, which is gripping half the world, which is the disappearance of a deep-sea submarine carrying wealthy adventure tourists off the coast of Newfoundland, where they were on a 5-day trip to view the wreck of the Titanic. Now, we're reporting here, Jason, that aside from the pilot and the CEO of the company, who I suppose technically are the steerage passengers, the other 3 passengers are all British, and one of them's just a teenager, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, so last night they had, 40 hours left of oxygen. How much have I got left now, Susie? My maths is pretty awful. But
it's about a day, less than
a day. So, I mean, you don't even want to try and imagine the terror, if they're still alive, they are going through in a very small space, uncertain if they'll get rescued. We're not sure what went wrong. It's kind of, that sense of of claustrophobia they must be feeling, and panic is absolutely terrifying. I am kind of, there was a great story in the Mirror on the next 2 pages after the main report of this guy who was trapped in a submarine off the coast of Ireland in the 1970s and survived. And he kind of says, don't give up hope. They had something like this 14 minutes there left by the time they surfaced. No, it can. I mean, sorry, 1973. I mean, it's just, that gives you a little bit of of optimism that, it's not over till it's over. But you do worry about the safety of this craft, Titan, the fact that it's controlled by a games console set.
And they've got apparently some building pipes that operate as ballast tanks, and it's an experimental craft, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's really like the Titanic itself, I think, because the CEO's on there, which of course Bruce Ismay was on the Titanic when it sank, although he made his escape. So I've just had to watch the film with my daughter, so I'm full of Titanic stuff. And only the elite could really afford to do it. So you, by definition, it attracts the great and good. The Titanic went down, they had Rothschilds on there, there was John Jacob Astor, there was W.T. Stead, who was the greatest journalist of his generation, former editor of the Pall Mall Gazette. And now we've got a billionaire, we've got a multi-millionaire, perhaps people some of us had never heard of before, but their dads, their husbands, their family men, with relatives all waiting for news, just as relatives did in 1912 when the Titanic hit the iceberg in exactly the same spot. I mean, it doesn't really bear thinking about how cold they must be as well down there. It's not, there's no sunlight, there's no nothing. They must be perishing and trying to conserve what little oxygen they've got. Now, what do you think, everybody? I'm sure there are people out there who are poring over every second and every update of this and have opinions about how likely it is they're going to be found. It does seem, we're hearing this morning, that there are reports and sounds have been heard on the ocean floor. Rhythmic banging, presumably the SOS Morse code. A Canadian search and rescue plane has picked them up every half an hour. So one assumes it's someone inside the craft banging on the sides to help people locate them. Sound travels a long, long way underwater, so that is the best way to be found. And if they're doing it every half hour, Jason, that implies that they're trying to conserve their energy. They're keeping, then maybe they'll have a bit longer than expected because they're staying calm. They're not going mad.
The other way of looking at it is it's actually quite worrying that it hasn't risen to the surface. The ballast tank should have emptied so it could gently rise up. If it's on the bed of the ocean floor, that's much more frightening, primarily because this is about the only submarine in the world which can go that deep. Most of the rescue submarines, will only go to kind of 600 meters. This is almost 3,000 to 4,000 meters. That is the real worry, because then it makes the whole rescue operation much harder. Yeah,
and the bottom of the ocean floor there is really craggy as well, apparently, so they could be wedged between things. If they haven't been able to open the ballast tanks, it implies they're either stuck, something is holding them down, or they have lost power some way. They're not able to actually operate the tanks.
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit to me, Susie, as well, which does feel, and I get the drama of the story, and I totally understand the fears and how difficult this must be for the families involved. But there's a little bit of me like this was this massive multinational rescue operation taking place for 6 very privileged tourists. And we kind of almost do nothing when kind of a boat goes down in the Mediterranean or the Channel with dozens of asylum seekers and refugees escaping a much harder life. And I just sometimes feel the contrast needs to be made.
Yes, I think so. I wonder what we would be doing if this was if refugees were coming across the Mediterranean in a submarine and it got lost.
Yeah,
I suspect not quite as much money in it, but hopes for the best and for the salvation of Stockton Rush, who is the pilot, Hamish Harding, one of the British businessmen who's on there, Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman, who's only 19, and Paul Henry Nargelet, who's in his 70s but is the pilot. Sharon says she's praying for their safe return, as are we all, and as apparently is the king, because he knows the Dawoods. They are on the board of the Prince's Trust. So there are a lot of the great and good and a lot of the millionaires worrying about this, like Jason says, less so about refugees in the Mediterranean, but I do hope they get found, and that the sounds of banging does indicate that there is hope still to be had. Now, speaking of long odds, we found some good news for you, and here it is. Now, this is another adventure tourist for you. A 50-year-old tortoise called Jemima, who escaped the back garden of her owner Beatrice's home in 2021 and was not seen again until she was spotted 2 years, and 5 miles later. Now, there was a chance to save her a bit earlier. Someone found her half a mile from home and tried to take her back, left her to the nearest house, but the owner was out, left her in the garden. But she escaped twice. She escaped again. And she has now been found at a riding stables 5 miles away from the garden she disappeared from, where she seems to have made a nice little home. She was able to hibernate, and she was very well fed. Obviously, she stopped running when she got to the point where she found carrots. Now, Jason, is this proof that adventures are not always bad for your health, and no matter how long the odds, sometimes a rescue is always possible?
Before I say anything, Susie, I just want to congratulate the sub-editor who came up with the headline "Turtle Recall." It's brilliant. Which one of my colleagues it was, but they deserve a lot of praise. Yeah, this is, we love, animals on the run stories, don't we? And then we love them in Reunited. Do you remember the 2 pigs?
The Tamworth 2.
Tamworth 2, which
yes.
went missing in the 1990s.
I think that was one of those great pack jobs where all the media turned up doing something ridiculous during the silly season, I think, trying to find these 2 pigs that had escaped the lorry on the way to the slaughterhouse, hadn't they?
Yeah, but Jemima, there's a lovely line in it when Jemima's owner goes, "They move a lot quicker than you think." She moved 2 miles 5 miles in 2 years. That's not brilliantly fast.
No, it's not. I'm just trying to.
I'm very glad she's been reunited, because I don't know how tortoises express elation or emotion, or what do they do to kind of celebrate, but.
No, well, the Jemima's average speed, I think I've done this sum right, is 0.00028 miles per hour, which I think equates with about a foot or something, I expect. So they don't move faster than you expect. It's just that they do tend to stop when there is a supply of fresh vegetables.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Lazy says she was only popping to the Shell station.
Very good.
No, we don't need those kind of puns. Turtle Recall was bad enough, especially if it doesn't respond to her recall. So, that's been an issue. Anyway, thank you for taking us through that, Jason. Thank you, everybody, for taking part. Good luck with everyone who's trying to raise the Titan on this last day of hope and optimism, trying to bring those people back. And Jemima, I hope you have a nice, big, fat supply of carrots and you don't need to go out hunting for your own anymore. Thank you, everyone, for taking part. We'll see you again on Monday for another edition of the News Agenda Explained. Till then, tatty bye.